we'll give everyone a minute to find us anyway.
Welcome to shows we have never practiced. Oh my god, it won't fit. Come on. You know what? That's great. I like it that way. That's fine.
Got a lot of the bookshelf. Everything's fine.
Nothing is fine. Everything's wonderful. Oh my god. I can't tighten this up. That's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. All right. There we go. This is the way. We can at least pull up YouTube here and watch ourselves. All right.
That's the old one. Okay, Peggy's here. She said, "Oh, this is different." Peggy, let us know if you can like hear us really well, like normal, or if we sound like we're far away.
Our show just gets like more and more off the rails as we go.
It's fine. It's fine. Everything is fine. It's fine, Peggy says.
Everything's fine. All right, here we go. That's us.
We just aren't sure if our mics are picking up.
That's us.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And we'll just lean in.
Here, I can change
It's okay.
No, it's not okay. We're gonna fix it. Look, I mean that's fine.
Yeah, we look good. Made it out of the corn maze of the first link. Okay, so I was kind of excited about this book, just saying, because we do have a local corn maze. The end. All right, everybody. Here we go. Ready? Go. Welcome to Books You Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Jason.
And today we are discussing The Thicket by Noelle Ihli. If you have not read the whole book, don't bother. I'm just kidding. Maybe if you're like a middle schooler, you would really like it. It would really be in your zone. But for real though, if you haven't read it and you want to read it, go read it and then come back and then you can watch the show because we'll spoil everything for you here. We are available on YouTube Music as a podcast, and we're on little old Instagram for the memes, and we're on Fable where we talk about the book as we go, which I think Fable is going to really help us out in our next book that we're super pumped about, Strength of the Few, because we're going to have a big chunk of reading without meeting, and I think that'll help us keep up with our thoughts, and we won't be like struggling to remember all these things that that we wanted to talk about. So we have a lot of new guests with us. Hello. We're glad that you're with us today. We're talking about The Thicket by Noelle Ihli. So if you haven't read that book, we don't want to spoil it for you. So just be aware. Anyway, so how'd you like the book?
You know what's wild is this messed up live stream of ours is better than the book.
Like the quality?
Yeah. Okay. So one of our new folks in here says, "Oh, I've read some of it." That's a great place to be.
Welcome.
I'm gonna be honest. We've only like DNR'd one book in this club, right?
Yeah.
And it was because it was horribly violent.
It was horrific. Yeah.
I had about half of this book left to read yesterday, and I was having a good day. And I didn't want it. And I seriously considered just like finding the Wikipedia
and
because
just kind of catching a summary.
I'm sure I wouldn't miss anything. And anyway, it turns out that there wasn't a whole lot like revealed at the end. So I guess I didn't miss anything anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so,
tell me about it.
For our viewer who's read some of it, did you just quit because you got bored, or have you just not finished it yet? I guess let us know.
So Peggy's saying that she suffered through. I agree. I feel like it was a suffering through. Nicole has some interesting thoughts about like who this book might be for. The cover of the book on our old live stream that didn't work right said that this was a thriller, and no, Allie, if you want to finish the book, we are going to talk about the whole book here.
And we
Since
don't want
since
to
the
ruin
club
it
just
for you.
finished it, so yeah, we don't want to ruin it for you, but we are letting you know that we're going to go in deep on this. That's sort of our deal. Anyway, but so I don't know.
Yeah. So
It was.
it is not a bad book. It's fine.
It's
It's fine.
big fine.
When I was in middle school, I loved reading R.L. Stein's Fear Street. That was his like horror series that was really geared, I think, towards teenage girls.
Mhm.
Goosebumps was like 7-year-olds, yucky, icky, creepy.
Yeah.
Fear Street was the kind of some of the true horrors that can await being a teenager. And I think that The Thicket would be very, very good to me if I read it when I was in eighth grade. This is because we were very much the whole time in the mind of these teenagers.
Mhm.
Is Peggy busy?
Yeah. No. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Peggy's making comments that are funny.
Oh,
so.
gotcha. Okay. So you spend the entirety of this book in the mind of these very annoying teenage girls who are only annoying because they are teenage girls.
Mhm.
It's very realistic.
Yeah.
They're talking about things that teenage girls talk about. They're learning to explore their sexuality. They're learning how to navigate social weird things. And they have this extra super hard weird thing thrown in there because
Yeah.
one of their former friends' brothers was murdered.
Mhm.
And so that's very difficult.
Yeah.
And so we see these teenagers trying to grapple with this horrific thing that's happened in the community. And they have no idea how to do that. The parents are not really talking to them about this. The counselors
Mhm.
at the school, like no one has mentioned any of this. It sounds like no one is really giving these kids an appropriate outlet, to talk about their feelings
Yeah.
here. All they're doing is banning this mask, Well, that's just going to make the kids grapple with it their own way.
Yeah.
And that is finding every mask they can find and setting up shrines and exploring, their morbid curiosity.
Yeah.
Because the concept of death is not real to them.
Right. Well, so I will say this. If this was pitched more as like a study of youth and trauma or something, we are closer to that than we are to like a thriller.
Yes.
Right? Because there's like 2 murder scenes, in this whole thing, and like I'll be honest, like the first one when the young boy gets killed, like that one's graphic,
Mhm.
and if the whole book was like that, I'd been like, okay, right, like that would have been a whole lot. By the time we get to the second murder scene, I care not at all. I'm invested in none of the characters, and like I don't want anybody to die. Like I'm on board. Nobody should get murdered, but like they're fake people that I don't care about. So like whatever, right? But I think like thriller wise, that's kind of, if it's going to be pitched that way. I feel bad about saying this, but like I don't care about Nora. I don't. I have had no time to get invested in her. I don't care about these other 3 girls because they're kind of terrible, right? But if it was like this is an exploration of teen life and trauma and like ways to grapple with that and the fallout of that or whatever,
Mhm.
if I had gone into this thinking that's what this was, and if there had been some changes away from more of like the thriller aspect, like you could get rid of the end of the book entirely, right? With like the epilogue, basically, like just chuck that out. It doesn't matter. But like I really thought we were going to know something about the murders and understand the murder. Like that's part of a thriller, is like to solve this,
Yeah.
and you don't get that. But if it was like this is an exploration of trauma, not explaining everything makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
The book just didn't go deep enough
Mhm.
into any direction.
Yeah.
It didn't go deep enough into the thriller to be a thriller. It didn't go deep enough into the kids for us to really try to understand where they're coming from. It just didn't quite go deep enough in any direction.
Yeah. Well, and so Allie is saying that kids have a young developmental mindset and should be able to express themselves, and I agree. And so I didn't think about the book this way until you said something about it this morning. And I do think that's a good way to like look at this. And maybe this book is more for like young people, or maybe they would like resonate with this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But like, and like, I do think that's an interesting topic, and that is a topic I would read a book about.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So, one of the sorry, we're talking about The Thicket by Noelle Ihli, if you're just joining us.
mhm.
And so if you haven't read the whole thing, just be aware that we're talking about the whole thing. So spoilers abound. Oh, I had a thought.
We were talking. I was saying something like, "Who is this for? How should this book be interpreted?"
Oh,
Yes.
so looking at this book as here's how teenagers deal with the absolute worst trauma possible. Which girl? I get confused between. It was Jamie. Jamie's the one who's mad at her boyfriend for having the angel all over her, or all over him
No,
at
no,
the
no.
party.
Oh,
That's Jamie. Marin is telling Jamie, "Don't worry about it."
yeah.
Yeah. These girls have gone to the thicket only to revisit the location where Brandon was killed.
Yeah.
Because why? Morbid curiosity to try to make it real. Who knows why? They're just curious and they go. A child has been murdered here.
Mm-hmm.
And her
And a grown man.
biggest concern is this guy that she just started dating a few weeks ago
Right.
being all over this other girl. Just like that's just an example of the like incomprehensibility of death to teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
That is still the biggest thing in her world.
Mm-hmm.
When like Nora's world has literally been wrecked because she is responsible for, well, she's not responsible for the death of her brother, but she's responsible for having left him alone.
Yeah. Well, but like, yes, but that goes to like kids not, especially like because like nobody saw the violence necessarily. Like they've seen the photos of like the dead man that Brandon sent out, right? Like he took pictures of
That's
like,
right.
I'm just saying like, so some people
Yeah.
have seen that and like the eyeball or whatever.
But that wasn't real.
Well, the man was.
The man was, but
Yeah.
the eyeball wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. The eyeball kind of seemed real to me, and then I just thought like that was nasty and unsafe, like from a health perspective. So I hope it was fake.
I don't think it was real.
But like kids don't see violence as being real, and so somebody named AM has just said something that says the book blurs the lines between staged and real violence, and I mean like so that's a good point, right?
Yeah.
And this actually makes me think like how we perceive violence and like the fact that like something terrible happened and people still want to like go there and like have that thrill. And then these people all end up getting like murdered or whatever, right? Like half of them. This actually reminds me of a joke I made last night. You were watching, what were you watching?
Home Alone?
Yeah. Okay. So Nicole's watching Home Alone, and I haven't seen Home Alone like since I've been an adult. And I like the first scene with all the kids running around is so much in their house is so much chaos for me that I said that I would like rather watch a movie about war than a movie about like all these people running around in my house. But that kind of like speaks to like sort of how we've been like desensitized by like war is like a trauma I cannot understand, but like a bunch of people yelling and screaming in my house is, and so like in my mind that's worse or something, but like these kids don't understand, and kids think they're gonna live forever,
Right. And even the serial killer brought that point up that kids have that thought, and it really hangs into young adults and for some adults into their 40s.
Yeah.
You just don't think death is really for you because your whole life is ahead of you and you haven't done all the things you think you're supposed to do. Yeah. Speaking of being desensitized, I did kind of wonder if this book wasn't as good to me because we have read some pretty good horrific thing. I mean, like Mexican Gothic.
Yeah.
Even some of our more like beachy, fun kind of thrillery type reads, like Wrong Place, Wrong Time.
Yeah.
Our first Mom Trom book. And The Retreat.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the names of books without spoiling what happened in them. I remember. So like I'm wondering if like had we not read some really good thrillers, would this have been better? Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really do think this should be geared towards young adults.
Yeah. All right, so AM, a new person to the
Mm-hmm.
book club, is coming out
Welcome,
with
by the
all
way.
these excellent questions,
Yeah, and
right?
I did like his question. Sorry, your question. Oh, we didn't put my phone on mute.
It's fine.
Okay. The question about like where else do we see this in the real world? This blurring
Hmm.
between staged and real violence and
Hmm.
gore and stuff like that. That's a very good question. Carry on. What was the other one?
Well, so
I
this
missed it.
question here is, or kind of sort of comment is that the Thicket becomes more popular after the real violence, so people are drawn to see the real horror. And what does that say about like media and sensationalism and things like that?
Mm.
And so like I agree, like part of the trauma, and like this is not necessarily book related, this is just like real life related, especially if we're interpreting this more as like a trauma book than a thriller,
Mm-hmm.
is that for victims of crimes, part of the trauma is the recovering over and over and over of this of the situation, right? And so we see Nora doing that, where she's like watching these news
Oh,
stories.
and poor baby
We
just cannot get off social
Yeah. Well, and
media
then we see her mother getting caught repeatedly by the media who want to interview her
interviews
over
and
and over and over again. And then I'm going to point this out, and this is like a part that we don't get in this story, but if the person was caught, then you have all the court that goes along with it, and court is also like incredibly re-traumatizing for people,
mm-hmm.
because you have to go through like the details and the planning, and like you start to find out like the reality of it, right? Like how much went into this, and part of this would be like that Brandon didn't matter. There was nothing special about Brandon. He was not a target. He was just the dude in the
Mm-hmm.
cabin at the time that our murderer was in there. Um, and like, how terrible is that, right? To find out that this is just like some freak violence situation, right? And at least if it was like targeted, there's like a certain understanding there. Like, okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it makes it better. I'm just saying that like there's
It's just
a chain
different.
of logic, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no logicking out of this one.
yeah,
It's poor bud.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
I,
Like
I
visiting war
yeah.
memorials and stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about?
No, no, sorry. I was
Okay.
looking down at Peggy's comment after that, where she says that like the guy gets away. And honestly, what's up with that, right? I mean, like, I really thought that the book was telling us that he got murdered. I thought Nora
Well,
killed
and I
him
think
with a
Nora
nail or
thought
something.
that she did. Dumb
Yeah.
little girl. Anel's not going to do that much.
And then like, okay, so two people have been murdered, something weird's going on, and like next door neighbor lady is cooking him soup for weeks while he like packs his chest with gauze. Come
Yeah.
on, yo.
She's like, silly guy riding your bike without your helmet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Mm.
crazy. All right, let's see.
And
Okay.
like asking, is it different? You know, we do go to war memorials and people visit, like where the Holocaust happened, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Good question. Is it different?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like we tell ourselves that we're going to pay respect to the
Yeah.
people and to make sure that we don't forget that these things can happen.
Yeah.
I imagine we're also satisfying a bit of morbid curiosity as well. What's the last thing that these people saw before they died? What we kind of want to see what they saw
Right.
in a safe, easy way. Um, I don't know.
Well, there's definitely something to be said for like trauma tourism, right, or
Yeah.
something. Um, and I do think a lot of people go for like the memorial of it, right? But like
Yeah.
definitely some people can go for other reasons, yeah. Okay, but so AM also had another thing about like the split perspective. And the split perspective, like I wanted more of our killer. I wanted to understand more. I actually have a theory about the killer. I don't think Nicole agrees, and like honestly, I wasn't like paying all that much attention, so I could be horribly wrong. But I really thought that at the scene where the three girls go to like the store and the cashier checks them out, I really thought that that was our killer. That the killer was the cashier. And Nicole thinks that it might have been a woman that was the cashier, so I could be like horribly wrong. But I kind of like want it to be somebody we've met. I don't want it to be somebody we've like never seen before, because like what what is it? What does the killer's perspective do for us? Like, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not sure it helps us like understand the trauma any better. I'm not sure it like pushes sort of like this interpretation that we're giving the book. I'm not sure it adds to that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think it's interesting that she gave us chapters with his perspective.
Hmm.
I hated the fly thing. That was terrible.
Yeah. Well, so then we were talking about the scene where like the guy just like invites himself on like a hunting trip with his neighbors.
How weird.
And that scene makes this appear to be that the killer is a kid, and that would have been interesting.
I just saw that as like being way in the past.
But it was. It was
Yeah.
definitely in the past. But so like that part reminds me of what was that show that I watched that we talked about last night? With the kid that goes to jail and saw one scene.
Adolescent.
Adolescence. So I've talked about this a couple times now on the show, but Adolescence on YouTube is a really phenomenal exploration of like child violence and trauma. And there's like heads up, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's all
It's just bad.
horrible, but it does what we are saying this book would sort of explore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just again, this book just did not go deep enough.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted us to get a perspective on the killer, it needed to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
If you wanted us to feel the anguish that Nora was feeling, it needed to go a bit deeper. You know, we got that one chapter when she walked on the treadmill barefoot
Mm-hmm.
just to like have a feeling, you know, like just to like get her blood pumping and just to feel something.
Yeah.
We had that one little moment, but
Mhm.
that was like squished out of memory almost by, you know, 5 chapters of this sleepover on the trampoline and pizza. I mean, like,
Look, I don't. I keep complaining about. I think I have one complaint. The sleepover was too long.
as
That's
they
it.
are
Full stop.
in real life.
I give you. I'll give you one more point on this book. Like one more point towards 5-star or whatever. Right? If we can cut the sleepover chapter down by 5 chapters.
And what we were supposed to get out of that, again, not deeply developed enough. One of the girls had created like a counter petition
Mhm.
to keep the maze open,
Mm-hmm.
but her mom had a petition to close it.
Really? I missed
Yeah,
all that.
so you know, like we're supposed to be getting this like here's how parents deal with trauma, here's how kids deal with trauma, but the parents and the kids aren't talking to each other. Nobody's having a real conversation. None of that got explored
Yeah.
clearly enough.
Or like, so there's this part where they're like bouncing on the trampoline, waiting for pizza or something, and they're
They're
like,
sleeping on the trampoline. They're laying on the
is it-
trampoline.
I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is, they're out there and they're like looking out into the darkness, and their neighbor's cooking hot dogs for no reason. Maybe their neighbor was the killer. I don't know. But they're like, what if he's out there? And they get like creeped out and go inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, but like he wasn't. I don't know. It was just like that could have been a little like you could have had like a dog come out, or like you
Well,
could have had.
there was a cat. Yeah.
I don't. I mean, like it
The
just
cat spooked him.
like if this was a spooky scary, we could have spooky scary to that scene, right?
uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like so one of the other things, like so if we're so I don't think this is a thriller. I think it's a tragedy,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what this is. And one of the other aspects that I think I would enjoy exploring just a little bit more would be Nora's father, who is totally absent throughout this entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's working, and I get that. He's got to provide for his family, but his like wife is falling apart, his daughter is falling
Mhm.
apart. And it is obvious to me that he is dealing with this trauma in his own way by being absent and just like, you know, continuing to work. But like if we could do this in like an adolescent sort of way, we would have like a whole chapter about him and how he's dealing with it through this perspective.
Mhm.
And we would have a whole chapter about like Nora's mother dealing with this trauma, but also having to talk to the news media because her husband won't do it, and somebody's got to get justice for her son. And like we would have that chapter.
Yeah.
And then we would have we would have a chapter about somebody who like works at the Thicket and they're dealing with the trauma of like, well, what if I let this guy in here? What if I messed up my job? Right, like this questioning of themselves. That would have been a cool book, exploring all these different perspectives. Dad trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, again, just not deeply explored enough. The very, very end of the book, like the acknowledgments, the author talked about a podcast. It's like a murder documentary type podcast where the podcaster, it sounds like just from the description, tries to give voice to the victims. And so the author had given like kudos to that person for their show and all the work they do to give voices to the victims and that kind of thing. And so then I wondered, like, is that what this book was supposed to be about? But again, not
No,
enough.
we don't give Brandon a voice
Brandon has
at
no voice.
all.
No.
No.
Okay, and that really ticked me off
Yeah.
too. Like this concept of saying like he wasn't my friend. I mean, like he was on the spectrum or something. That is not someone's whole identity.
Yeah.
And that doesn't stop someone from having friends. And that doesn't give you an excuse to be a butthole.
Yeah. I do actually think that like that piece where his like three not friends, but then they go and like start a little memorial for him in a shrine in his locker and all that. I did think that was sort of like an interesting piece of just like teen commentary.
Yeah.
About like how fickle people are, and like basically what they're doing at this point is Brandon had no value to them until he was dead.
Right.
And at that point they can perform this like mourning ritual to gain social credit, right, with their friends or whatever. And I did think that was interesting, but we could have played with that a little more as well.
And surely to make themselves feel better about being a jerk to him. I mean, and you know, like people will read this and be like, gosh, kids are just horrible these days. Let's back that up a little bit. It's a parent's job to teach their kids kindness and empathy.
Yeah.
Yes, kids are going to like do things their way and you know, some kids are jerks or whatever. But like it's not just a kid thing. Like this comes from the foundation of how we're raising our kids.
Yeah.
Treat people with kindness,
Mm-hmm.
gently correct. You know, you don't have to like stand somebody up at the corn maze, you know, to try to get them to not be a weirdo. You can just tell them like, oh, you stand too close to me sometimes, but otherwise we're cool. Like, well, I don't understand.
But so adults are ever present in this book, but parents are clearly absent.
Yeah.
You know, I think the only parent that we ever really spend time with is like the mom who's at the sleepover party, and she's, I guess, busy doing her petition or whatever, and she's like watching TV, right? Like the parents are absent. There is no parenting in this book.
Yeah.
There was no correction, and I'm not sure that was the point, but that's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like kids are figuring it out, and they're like moderately terrible, and I was terrible, and that's fine.
Well, I mean, I was terrible too, but I feel like I didn't pick on people who already were getting picked on.
Yeah.
I would pick on people if they were jerks.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
well, you punch up, you don't punch down.
Yeah.
Sure. Good times. I'm glad it was a week read. I'm glad we chose to do it in a week and not in two.
Yeah. And again, you know, with all of our commentary about like this book just didn't go deep enough in any one direction, and it's like in its on its behalf. I mean, it was a short book. There was not a lot of space to do it. But pick a lane. I don't know, like go somewhere and explore it deeply.
I mean, like, yeah, I guess it's a short book, but like you made it that way. It could be longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read other short books that did explore concepts.
Yeah.
More deeply.
Yeah. Well, honestly, we've said a lot more about it than I ever expected us to. So, like, that's good. we actually, I think that's one thing that I enjoy most about the book club is that we can pretty much read anything and pull something.
We can, get some good. The conversation has been better than the book.
Yeah.
The synopsis was better than the book.
That's the teacher in the core book club, right? We got a bunch of teachers up in here. We're going to find something.
Shelby says there's no way she'd be allowed to go to this place after murder.
Yeah.
That was an interesting conversation that came up when the two parents were talking. The mom saying, no, absolutely not. They need to close this down. No one should be able to go. And the dad's like, we can't just bubble wrap the world because there's a bad actor out there.
Yeah.
And I see both sides of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as a parent is a very, so back to kind of mom traum, dad traum,
Mm-hmm.
that is a very difficult balance to find, is how do you keep your child safe,
Mm-hmm.
but also allow them to like live?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you can't keep a kid safe. It's all calculated risk. And sometimes you lose on that risk.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Yeah.
And that's horrible.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, if you were like, look, you can go to the Thicket next year or whatever, like, cool, I guess, whatever. But like this year, while there's like a known murderer running around and like that's guaranteed to be the stomping grounds, like, not great.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I would probably think like, well, shoot, something bad's happened there. Security's really going to be tightened up now.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's what the kids kind of thought.
Yeah. I did sort of think like as far as the murderer goes, right? I don't really care a whole lot about him. Like it would have been interesting if we could explore his psychology a little bit more. We got a little bit of the sort of like antisocial bit, right, with the flies and with the hunting scene, or where like I mean, like you get like the basic stuff you have to get for like because he's not just a murderer and he's not really like a serial killer, but he's a murderer for pleasure, and so like and that's very similar, I think, to a serial killer. But he doesn't have like a type necessarily, and so like that's kind of like a thing going on here. He's doing it for the sadism, right? And so like we can call it a serial killer if you want to. I think there's some differences. Anyway, point being is I did think the scene of him like figuring out how to get his knife and everything into the thing was sort of interesting. Sort of like the plot of like how to pull this off. And he has, and like in the scene in like the granary or whatever, he has like these thoughts about, you need to like double wrap twice and then like once again, right? Like if you think you've done enough tape, keep going, right? Or whatever, right? And a lot of times that's sort of like a criticism that people have in these things is like, well, why didn't the guy just keep going? Or why does he monologue there at the end, right? And give people enough time, right? Like you've read enough books, just get to it, right? Anyway, but so like we get like the very minimum things that we need to understand that this guy is a killer for pleasure, but like nothing else, which is fine because in this interpretation that we have, it is not about him,
right?
And it doesn't matter,
right?
But we get those things anyway, so we might as well give a little more, right?
Yeah, we had too many scenes of him just like watching the news, all excited to see his little story on there. Yeah. And that's a big,
sure,
controversy too, is, how do you provide coverage of this thing without providing glory to the person who's done it?
Right.
So, yeah.
Good talk.
I think that's
that's
all I got.
That's all I got.
More than I thought. That's pretty good.
All right, so let's talk briefly then about next week. So the next book, if you are new to the club and you're still in here, because I think most of our new folks have left, like just judging by the number, it looks like the regulars are here now, and that's fine. Our next book for the book club is The Strength of the Few by James Islington. It is the second in a series. I can't remember the name of the series. But the first one is The Will of the Many.
Maybe the Hierarchy series? Is that what it's called?
That's right, yeah. So if you have not read The Will of the Many, you should not read The Strength of the Few. Read that one first.
Right.
But The Strength of the Few comes out on Tuesday or Wednesday. It might be Thursday. It's the 13th or the 12th or something. So it comes out this week. And instead of having our normal meeting every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central, we are going to be taking about 2 weeks off to read pretty much the first half of The Strength of the Few. We will put out a syllabus for that book as soon as we get our hands on a copy.
And the pre-order might let us see the table of contents.
It might, yes. So
So we'll get that out to you.
Well, even if it's the table of contents, we kind of want to go by like page number or something, right? Yeah. Okay, sure. Yes. Anyway, but so we will put that out as soon as we can. But as soon as you get your book, feel free to start reading. But we want to take our time with it, and we want to have fun. I know a lot of people are going to blast through it as quickly as they can, and that's fine. But
we still plan on splitting it up pretty good.
Yeah, we think it'll be 3 weeks of meeting time.
Yeah.
But it'll probably be about 4 weeks of read time. So the second and third meeting will be shorter than the first.
We'll get it sorted out.
Yeah. We'll make sure that you guys are covered. No problems. I kind of like this format. Maybe we go back to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just more people. That was fun.
It got wild there for a second.
Yeah, it was a lot happening. But it was cool. So. Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. We will see you guys in roundabouts 2 weeks. I'll be watching for that syllabus to come out. And I can't wait to get started.
Happy reading.
See ya.